You're listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you for joining us. In this series, we feature Terry Morgan reading from her work, The Ambassador, a fun, family-friendly sci-fi martial arts adventure. Previously, the Ambassador and Kell were at a reception on Procyon 5 when they met the Ambassador's old friend, Dr. Galen Bontire. In this episode, the Ambassador and Galen have to fight their way out of a trap. With Kell's help, they evade capture and return to the Magellan. Galen is surprised to find their old classmates, Sentar, Maru, and Biani, already on board. The Ambassador reveals their mission. As Captain Logan lays out their transport plans, Kell arrives with very good news. 4 of his friends, all expert pilots, will be coming to help with the mission. Friends coming to help is a key theme in the stories. In the real world, we don't always have friends who will come to help. In the fictional world of the Ambassador, everyone has friends who will come to help. She has her team who are absolutely there for each other and anyone else. They help and protect each other. Her friendship with President Sambarak and how they help each other is a core thread. She learns she can rely on Captain Logan and his team. Her 4 old friends are the basis for the stories. When I started writing the stories, I wanted to go out with friends, maybe have dinner and go watch a movie, something I hadn't seen before, but something that was similar to other movies I liked. I didn't have that. There wasn't anyone calling to invite me to go out. The movie I wanted to see didn't exist. If I really wanted to watch that movie, I had to create it, but I'm not a screenwriter or a playwright. I'm a storyteller. So I wrote the stories first. I'd still like to see that movie. For the stories, this episode completes the introductions. It also begins the larger story. The larger story crosses generations and cultures, east and west. It goes back 30 years and forward 20. When we meet the Ambassador, she wants to retire. Gradually, I introduce her team, her old friends, her teacher, and the martial arts lore that is their foundation. The Ambassador and her old friends are older than the other characters. There are subtle differences in the ways they interact and the ways they speak that reflect their age and their history together. As the story progresses, the main characters talk about getting older. It's not just another adventure series in the same time with the same characters that never grow old. This episode also marks a change in the stories. Events begin to move along more quickly. There's more going on. I started slowly, taking time to introduce the characters and their universe. With this episode, I've completed those introductions. From this point on, the characters introduce what they are doing and give their own explanations, mostly. Early on, I wanted to include enough background that what the characters were doing would have context. But that narrative exposition isn't something I wanted to rely on. It's useful, but not for everything. I also tried not to have the characters do too many information dumps. That's boring. Dialogue is more fun. Dialogue requires someone speaking and someone listening. Who is the dialogue between? Who is speaking? Who is listening? What do they say? I use the way the characters speak and the languages they use to reveal more about who they are and to offer another perspective on the situation. I chose real-world languages to keep the dialogue grounded. The characters aren't using made-up languages that no one else can understand. Their language skills are a shared difference that provides a subtle connection between the characters. Who uses which languages? That they each have and use particular languages matters for the characters and their relationships. In the stories, I intentionally bring together characters from different cultures who speak different languages. But I did not want any of them to be isolated. I wanted all the characters to have friends. I didn't want them to be lonely heroes. They all have someone they can talk with, someone who knows what to say and what not to say, someone they can trust, someone who speaks the same language. In this episode, the Ambassador had broken her arm. Galen and the doctor are enthusiastically chatting about medical treatments while taking care of her. Galen is overjoyed to meet someone as brilliant as the doctor. The doctor is more than pleased to meet Galen. Galen is one of the most respected scientists in the Alliance. I'll be right back. Galen was smiling, but his eyes were quite serious. Well then, it seems we need to be making some preparations of our own, he said. The ambassador grinned. Indeed, I think it will be quite an event. Would you care to join us? She asked. Galen already knew he was being invited to go somewhere. That's why she was here. That sounds like a wonderful party. I'd be happy to attend. Do you think your aide can make some of those pastries? He asked in a very loud voice. The ambassador nodded. That is a great idea. I will ask him. We'd have to go to the Altair system to collect the syrup. It would be maybe a 2 or 3 week trip from here, she said. She blinked a few times and smiled. Galen picked up on the ruse. Could I come with? It's been some time since I've been out. I've gotten to be something of a homebody. This would be an amazing chance to see original biodiversity. Please let me come with, he said. Of course you can come with. We would be pleased to have you, the ambassador said. Galen grinned. When do we leave? He asked. The ambassador scratched her nose. First thing tomorrow, she whispered. She stood up. I could stretch my legs a bit. Why don't we walk around, she said. They walked around the patio slowly, looking at the potted plants. A few branches from the trees along the wall hung over the patio. Galen reached up to take a leaf. His back was to the guards. He looked at her and held the leaf for her to see. He wanted the guards to believe they were talking about the leaf. Sure, of course. Dream on. How are you going to get us passage on a ship leaving tomorrow? I'd like a reclining seat, please. Even with top credentials, it will take a week or more to even make the request, let alone get it approved, he said. The ambassador looked at him and grinned. Galen smiled. You know something, don't you? Give, he said. The ambassador grinned bigger. She looked at the leaf and held out her hand. Galen handed her the leaf. The ambassador took it and held it up in front of her face. I have my own ship, she said. Galen dropped his chin and opened his eyes wide. You have what? Holy crap, you must have one hell of a charter, he said. He immediately realized he'd said that a bit too loud. He started laughing as if she'd just told a joke. The guards started moving towards them. The ambassador saw them. She grinned, took Galen's arm, and started back inside. Oh my, no, really, Galen said with a bit of feigned disbelief. No wonder it's going to take us a month, he said as they walked past the guards. We'll have plenty to do along the way to Altair, too. You said you wanted to learn how to make those pastries, the ambassador said. They kept laughing as they walked into the reception hall. Seems I need to go prepare a few things, Galen said. He patted her arm playfully. The ambassador smiled. You won't need much, she whispered. She walked over to the main table. I really like these cookies, she said. She picked up a napkin and wrapped a few of the cookies in it. Galen smiled and held out his hand. I'd like some too, please, he said. He understood exactly what she meant. She wanted him to bring only essentials, 1 bag, 2 at most. The ambassador handed him the cookies. Galen put them in his pocket and walked out. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be a challenge to get ready to leave so quickly, he thought. He'd grown accustomed to the slower pace of a quiet, scholarly life. Going out again wasn't something he relished. He had promised himself he would keep to his studies and not get involved in any interplanetary troubles. But this was Micah asking. She rarely asked for anything. There must be more to it, much more. Something to go. Large dining room on Procyon 5. The ambassador had stayed back. She wanted to give Galen time to leave and to see if he was followed. She picked up a plate and stepped over to another table with small pies. She stood there as if trying to decide which of the pies she was going to take. Vice-Chancellor Wyron came up beside her. "How do you like the truffles, Ambassador?" she asked. The ambassador turned and smiled. She found the vice-chancellor unpleasant. Nothing she could put her finger on, just an odd feeling. She didn't want to be anywhere near her. "Those are excellent, Chancellor, but these are the most delicious I have ever had. How do your chefs manage such beautiful detail and flavors? I also have to say, the plates are beautiful. The detail on these birds and flowers you have painted along the edges is exceptional," she said. She traced the edge of the plate in her hand. Chancellor Wyron smiled and squared her shoulders. "It took a few weeks of planning and several days of preparation. We always appreciate your praise and appreciation of our cuisine, Ambassador. We're happy to offer you a few small delicacies from our world," she said. She picked up a plate of gold and cream-colored pastries and offered it to the ambassador. The ambassador smiled politely, took the plate with both hands, and bowed. "Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. I was just getting ready to go to my quarters. If you will give me leave, I'll take these with me. Having them with my coffee in the morning would be quite nice," she said. "Of course, Ambassador, as you wish. I look forward to our meeting in the morning. Good night," Chancellor Wyron said. "Good night, Vice-Chancellor," the ambassador replied. She smiled and walked out of the room. Something wasn't right. She'd heard something in the Vice-Chancellor's voice. There were now 3 guards in the hallway instead of 2. She smiled at them and at her plate as she walked out. No, something was very wrong. She could feel it. She had learned to trust her feelings. Sooner would be good. Guest house on Procyon 5. The ambassador walked back to the guest house as quickly as she could without raising suspicion. She gathered her things. She hadn't brought much. Everything fit in her diplomatic bag. She was just about to walk out the door when her personal comlink chimed. She took a small screen out of her pocket. Lieutenant Katie appeared on the screen. "Ambassador, we need to move up our departure," she said. The ambassador frowned. "What does that mean, Lieutenant? You aren't giving me much information," she said. "Captain Logan ordered me to contact you. He said to tell you and Kell to get back on board as quickly as possible. He didn't explain. That's all I know," she said. The ambassador nodded. "I see. Tell Captain Logan we have one more. Where's Namani?" she asked. Maya took over the link. "Namani is on board. Kell is waiting on your shuttle," she said. "Thank you, Maya. Let Kell know to be ready. I'm leaving now. We will meet him as quickly as we can," she said. She closed the comlink. Her instincts had been right. The fact that Logan had not offered any explanation meant they needed to move quickly. She opened a local comlink. "Galen Bontire," she said. It took a few seconds for the directory to find him. "Micah?" "Now, Southeast Gate, quickly," she said. She closed the comlink without waiting for him to say anything. She picked up her diplomatic bag and opened the door. There was now a guard in the hallway opposite her door. He stepped forward and blocked her exit. "I have orders that you should not leave your room tonight, Ambassador. If there's something you need, tell me, and I will arrange to have it delivered," the guard said. The ambassador smiled at him and stepped back just behind the threshold. "Through or around?" she thought, quickly sizing him up. She smiled bigger and shook her head. She pulled her bag to the front. "I must go to speak with my aide about these agreements. We have to review some things. There are details of our meetings. The Alliance expects my report. I won't be long. It will only take us a short time. It must be done tonight. We have meetings in the morning. I'm only going to the next floor. Surely my going to visit with my aide on the next floor can't be considered going out. The High Council is waiting for my report. Do you want to keep the High Council waiting?" she asked. As she was speaking, she shifted back and forth with emphasis. Each time she talked about the report, she shifted forward. When she talked about the time, she shifted back and to the side. Gradually, she moved out into the hallway. I'll be right back. She kept talking until she was just outside his reach, but not far enough away to cause him to react. He'd have to lean or take a step to grab her. The guard didn't have an answer. The ambassador didn't expect him to answer her. She smiled at him and pointed up. I don't want to keep them waiting either. I will return shortly, she said. She disappeared before he could blink. The guard stood there for a second and then followed her. He stopped at the stairwell and turned his head to listen. He looked up, then down, and shook his head. The ambassador was already out the door. Among the skills she'd mastered were moving quickly and being quiet. It would take an equally skilled adept or a thermal camera to track her. Dance with me. Outside the diplomatic compound on Procyon 5. Evening had turned into night. The amber lights along the walkways gave them a warm glow. It was quiet. There was a faint smell of fresh-watered plants. The ambassador walked away from the guest house deliberately, but not too fast. She wanted to appear as though she were simply going out to take care of something. But it was late, and there was something else. She felt it. Her intuition was telling her that she needed to leave. She made herself lighter. She lengthened her step. She saw someone moving towards the gate from the west. She recognized Galen's long stride. She glanced around. She didn't see anything. She picked up her pace. We'll be fine. We get inside the gate and use the hoverpads to get to the hangar. Kell is ready. We'll be on our way in just a few minutes, she thought. She heard something. She shifted her weight slightly and kept walking, listening closely. She shifted the shoulder strap holding her pouch over her head so it went across her chest. Her steps became more deliberate. Someone was nearby. She could feel it. A figure stepped out of the shadows directly in front of her. Why, Ambassador Lawrence, what a surprise to meet you here. We weren't expecting anyone to be out this late, Vice-Chancellor Jervis said. 2 guards stepped up just behind him. Chancellor Jervis, good evening. Yes, this is a surprise, the ambassador said a bit louder than necessary. She smiled at him. She did not want to have to deal with him. She'd learned he had become a little too friendly with some traitors who were scouting for the Olmeri. She shifted a little to where she could see past him to where she'd seen Galen. It was too late. 2 more guards had Galen. They were all walking towards where she and the Chancellor were standing. The ambassador smiled as if saying goodbye. I see your men have met Dr. Bontire. We have just been discussing a trip to Altair. My shuttle has archives from some of the farms we might visit. We won't be long, she said. She took a step towards Galen. Galen nodded to her and closed the gap. He smiled. Indeed, Chancellor, I'm quite excited to have the chance to visit Altair, too. I need to see what I should prepare. We appreciate your concern in coming out to meet us. I'm certain we will be fine. We'll only be a few minutes. I'm fascinated by any biology archive. Most find them rather boring, but if you want to come along, you're welcome to join us, he said. He smiled broadly and turned his head. He knew this was a problem, and pretending it wasn't would not make it go away. He looked at the ambassador. The ambassador tilted her head slightly to the right. Chancellor Jervis shook his head. Dr. Bontire, Ambassador, it seems you don't quite understand. We would prefer that you return to your quarters. Your shuttle will still be here in the morning. Besides, you have an important meeting in the morning, don't you, Ambassador? Why don't you and the doctor go get some rest? You can look at the biology archives in the morning, he said. He took a step back and motioned to the guards to take them. The ambassador and Galen had been moving around, a shift here, a step there. Closer to the inside on the same line, moving in time, they put the guards in a box. 2 guards in front, 2 behind. They started to move. Galen took a small step forward. The ambassador took a small step back. With that, they changed the time each guard would arrive. Now one would arrive before the other. The ambassador set her shoulders. She shifted her weight back. She waited. The first guard reached her. He grabbed her left wrist. He stepped around to take her shoulder. She tightened her arm. He tightened his grip. She shifted, brought her arm up and out, slammed her elbow into his ribs, used the recoil to break his nose, trapped his leg, and broke his knee. She shifted back, dropped lower, turned, and sent him flying into the second guard. They both went down. Galen set his weight. He waited. The first guard grabbed his wrist. He struggled. The guard held tighter. He turned his arm and broke the guard's thumb. He grabbed the guard's hand and twisted it backward and down, then behind. He applied more pressure. The guard's arm went limp. He caught the guard under his ribs and tossed him into the second guard. They weren't going to get up any time soon. The ambassador picked up her bag. Galen picked up his bag. Chancellor Jervis cowered behind a tree. The ambassador looked at him and shook her head. Chancellor Jervis, I will file the appropriate protests. We are leaving. You shouldn't try to stop us, she said. She nodded to Galen. They ran to the gate. The ambassador entered her access code. Galen pushed the gate open. She ran through. He hung back to cover her. The ambassador ran to the mechanic's shed. She grabbed 2 hoverpads. She stood on one and held the handle of the other. Guards, guards, Chancellor Jervis called out. He's recovered his voice, Galen said. Yes, well, let's go, the ambassador said. She pointed to a bank of hangars. Galen took the handle and jumped on. They were in the open, visible, and they weren't moving that fast. Need a ride? The ambassador's shuttle. Kell had gone out to check the shuttle earlier. Maya had called to let him know that the ambassador and someone else were on their way. He had finished his pre-flight checklist. He was starting to get concerned. She should have been here by now, he thought. He looked out the window again. This time he saw 2 hoverpads coming towards the hangar, followed by several more. The first 2 would be overtaken in a few more seconds. Aw, crap, he said. He set the controls to full manual and moved the shuttle out of the hangar. He brought the craft around and came up parallel with the first 2 hoverpads. He slowed almost to a stop and opened the side door. With that seemed to be no more than a breath, he turned the craft so it was in front of them, capturing both of them mid-flight. Go, the ambassador shouted as she and Galen fell through the door. Kell started up over the city as he waited for the door to close. Then he accelerated on an 85-degree ascent. It would have been hard to follow them, but possible. He confirmed that they weren't being followed, slowed, and leveled off in the upper atmosphere. Are you all right, Ambassador? He asked. He turned around to look back at her. The ambassador smiled. Yes, thank you, Kell. I'm okay. You were right on time as usual. Remember Dr. Bontire? She asked. She got to her feet, brushed off her clothes, and sat down. She frowned as she moved her left arm onto her lap. Kell smiled. I was hoping to meet you again, Doctor, but I didn't expect it would be quite this way, he said. Galen laughed. Me either. How did you do that? I mean, how did you get the ship to go that slowly and stay airborne? And that turn, it was almost like falling into a cotton cloud. Well, maybe not quite that soft, he said. He rubbed his elbow and sat down. Kell smiled. Manual controls, he said. Galen chuckled. Only an Alderan could have done anything like that. It could only be done with perfect timing and manual controls. The ambassador pressed the link on her comm panel. Captain Logan, she said. Ambassador, it's good to hear from you. We were a bit concerned, Captain Logan replied. Indeed, Captain, we have much to discuss, the ambassador said. More than you think, Ambassador. We need to leave as soon as you are on board. I'll explain. Sooner is better. Kell? Captain Logan asked. We will be in range in just under 2 minutes, Captain, Kell replied. Cut that to 1, Captain Logan said. Understood, Captain. Have the hangar ready, Kell said. He turned to the ambassador and Galen. Sit back and buckle up, he said. He punched it. You are going to tell me what's going on eventually, aren't you, Galen asked. The ambassador nodded. You won't like it, she said. I figured that out already, Galen said. Have coffee, the ambassador offered. Real coffee, as in actual, real ground coffee beans, Galen asked. The ambassador nodded. I'm really not going to like this, am I? Galen asked. Probably not, the ambassador replied. Galen chuckled and shook his head. Free parking. Flight deck on the Magellan. Kell slid the shuttle into the hangar and locked it in place. The outer hangar door closed. They had just started to get up when the star drive pushed them back into their seats. The ambassador looked at Kell and raised her eyebrows. Seems we really don't want to be here. Maya? What's happened? She asked. Maya appeared. The High Council received word that Procyon 5 is cooperating with the Olmeri. A small group of Olmeri ships were spotted heading this way. The Council also received a message from one of our traders that the Olmeri want to bring you to Ulm for questioning, she said. Oh, great. I'm willing to bet that was the meeting Chancellor Jervis wanted me to stay for. I'm so glad we didn't stay. Maya, please arrange a briefing with everyone, including our guests, as soon as possible, the ambassador said. Yes, Ambassador, Maya replied. Kell stood up. Ambassador, I'll meet you in the briefing room. I have something to take care of, he said. The ambassador nodded. Thank you, she said. Any chance you're going to tell me what's going on? Galen asked. The ambassador shook her head. Not right this minute. I'll explain everything in the briefing. Your sleeve seems not quite connected to your shirt anymore, she said. Galen looked at his torn sleeve. Yes, that is true. Your pants have some extra ventilation, he said. He pointed at the torn knee of her pants. The ambassador looked down at her pant leg. She tried to reach her arm to her knee. She couldn't. Galen frowned. What's wrong with your arm? He asked. The ambassador wrinkled her nose. Elbow to the ribs. I think he was wearing body armor, she said. Let me see, Galen said. I can't move it, the ambassador said. That's because it's broken in 3 places, Galen said. Oh, the ambassador said. I don't have anything with me that can treat this, Galen said. My team doctor is a keeper of water. He can treat it. Can you get me fixed up so I can get through the briefing? The ambassador asked. I can set the brakes so there's no more damage, but I can't repair them, Galen said. Do it, the ambassador said. It's going to hurt, Galen said. I can't feel it now, the ambassador said. That's a bonus. I need something to wrap your arm, Galen said. The ambassador nodded toward a side storage bin. That cabinet. There's a long scarf, she said. Galen got the scarf. Okay then, sit still, he said. He held her shoulder and pulled down just above the elbow. The bone snapped into place. He gently wrapped the scarf around it. Then he took her forearm in his hands and pulled. The bone snapped into place. He wrapped the scarf around it. He gently bent her elbow and moved her arm to just under her ribs. Then he wrapped the scarf around her waist. I can't move my arm, the ambassador complained. You couldn't move it before I wrapped it, Galen said. Well, the ambassador said. Not moving it is the point, Galen said. The ambassador nodded. It doesn't hurt, she said. It will, Galen said. How long? The ambassador asked. Maybe 30 minutes, Galen said. Then we should go, the ambassador said. Are you sure? Galen asked. The alliance with the Pier is a problem. There's a lot to cover. The sooner we get started, the better. I'll be okay for now. Besides, I'd really like a cup of coffee, the ambassador said. Galen grinned. Real coffee? Lead me to it. He reached out his hand to help her get up. The ambassador got up slowly. Nope, still doesn't hurt, she said. She grinned. Galen shook his head. Let's go before it starts, he said. They hurried down the ramp and across the deck. Chapter 6. Endings and Beginnings. Part 2. The Old Guard. In the time before, there were heroes. Hello again. The diplomatic briefing room on the Magellan. Kell, the ambassador, and Galen had returned to the Magellan. As soon as they were on board, the ship engaged the star drive. Kell went to make a call. Galen set and wrapped the ambassador's broken arm. Then they transported to the guest section for the briefing. The ambassador and Galen stepped off the transport platform and walked down the hallway to the briefing room. They were still a bit disheveled from the fight. Galen sniffed the air. Coffee, he said. The ambassador grinned. Told you, she said. They walked a little faster. Lieutenant Katie and Commander Brandon were standing near one of the projector screens. Captain Logan, Beth, Namani, and the doctor were standing near the coffee table off to one side. I'll be right back. Namani had just made a fresh pot of coffee. 3 others stood with their backs to the door at the far end of the room, looking out the windows. There wasn't anything to see. They were going too fast. Captain Logan looked up. "Ambassador, it's good to have you safely on board," he said. He looked at her arm and turned his head to one side. The ambassador nodded. "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate your getting us out of," she said. She stopped and smiled. Galen was going to need a minute. The 3 at the far end of the room had turned around when they heard her voice. They were all grinning. Even their eyes twinkled. Galen had started toward the coffee table. He looked up at the movement. His jaw dropped. He started laughing. He slid over the conference table, landed perfectly, and opened his arms. "Sentar, Maru, Biani, I never imagined I'd see all of you in one place. It's so good to see you again," he said. "Ho, Galen!" Sentar called out. His great booming voice filled the room. "Seems you are the mystery passenger we had to pick up," he said. Sentar was tall, about the same height as Captain Logan and Namani, with broad shoulders and a square build. A few curls of his short brown hair were brushed with gray. He took a step, reached out to grab Galen by the shoulders, and slapped him on the back. Galen stepped forward, returned the hug and the slap. He turned around, his hand still on Sentar's shoulder. "Micah, seems there was something else you weren't sharing," he said. The ambassador smiled her Cheshire cat grin. She looked at Sentar and winked. "Wouldn't be complete without him, would it?" she asked. She grinned a little bigger. Sentar smiled and shook his head. He and Galen had shared a room during their training years. They had been best friends. They'd tried to keep in touch, but it wasn't easy. Maru and Biani were standing just behind Sentar. They stepped forward to Galen, with Maru on his right and Biani on his left. Maru's dark brown hair fell in curls to her shoulders, complementing the light gold of her face. She had an openness about her that was almost childlike. She seemed much younger than she was. Biani was still as slender as ever. She had always kept her straight black hair short, so it framed her face. She wore a cream-color shirt that seemed to give her rich, dark gold skin an even deeper hue. Maru and Biani had been close friends since their early days on Roz 2. They were training partners. They both liked traveling. They had been security for more than a few trade delegations. They'd gotten into and out of a few scrapes together. Their negotiation skills were quite good. Their fighting skills were better. It was rare to see either one of them without the other. "It's so good to see you again," Maru said quietly. She took Galen's arm. Biani was still laughing as she came up to take his other arm. "The expression on your face when you saw us was priceless. Can we do it again?" she asked. "How did you get here?" Galen asked Sentar. Sentar pointed at the ambassador. "Same as you," he said. "I hope not. We had to insist on leaving Pelskara. They made sure we had souvenirs too. See," Galen said. He held up his torn sleeve. "You mean a ripped sleeve is not the newest fashion?" Biani asked. Sentar laughed. "All right, so maybe not the same. I didn't have to give up a good shirt. Micah just dropped by and invited me to come along," he said. "She's good at that," Biani said. "Indeed," Maru said. "What about you and Maru?" Galen asked. He looked at Biani. "We arrived together," they replied in unison. Sentar chuckled. "Of course you did. When have you two not traveled together?" he said. "It's so good to see all of you. I missed you," Galen said. They had trained together, eaten together, lived together, and kept each other company for 3 years on Roz 2. After they graduated, they all went in different directions. They'd kept in touch more or less, but other than an occasional visit, they had not spent time with each other in many years. Everyone had been paying attention to Galar, Sentar, Maru, and Biani. It was hard not to. Their presence filled the room. They were all adepts and keepers. Sentar was a keeper of metal, water. Maru was a keeper of water. Biani a keeper of fire. And Galen was a keeper of wood. Sentar grinned at Galen and looked over at the ambassador again. He looked down at her arm and frowned. "What happened?" he asked. Galen pointed to his sleeve. "We declined an invitation," he said. The doctor stepped up next to the ambassador. "You broke your arm?" he asked. The ambassador nodded. "Galen said it. It doesn't hurt," she said. "Yet," the doctor said, frowning at her and nodding to Galen. "We'll have a short briefing," the ambassador said. "Very short," the doctor said. He looked at her arm. She has always been like this, Galen said. He smiled at the doctor and winked at the ambassador. The doctor shook his head and sighed. The ambassador smiled at them. "Thank you for taking care of me," she said quietly. The doctor grinned and nodded to her. Galen smiled. The ambassador moved to the front of the room. She grinned at her old classmates. She looked at her team, Captain Logan and his officers. "Okay then, we should get started. We can have lunch tomorrow to catch up and make proper introductions. We have a lot to cover and some new developments to discuss. Maya, would you summarize what we know up to now?" she asked. Everyone sat down around the table. The four old friends on one side, Captain Logan, Commander Brandon, and Lieutenant Katie on the other. Namani and Beth sat all around one end. The doctor took a chair in front of, near the ambassador. A large screen on one side of the room lit up. It showed footage of the Olmeri destruction on several planets, along with various maps showing their known paths and path projections. Maya appeared. "The Olmeri have accelerated their enter and leave incursions. They enter and leave until finally they don't leave anymore. We don't really know where they are going or why. We do know if we allow them to continue, they will cut through wide areas of Central Alliance protected planets, as well as currently occupied non-treaty worlds. The Council received word that the Olmeri were exploring another system near the Hyades cluster. So far, they have not found Galen," she said. Captain Logan looked at the map. He frowned. "This is worse than we suspected," he said. The ambassador nodded. The doctor shook his head and turned his palms up. "But what are we going to do? What can we do? We're supposed to be a diplomatic team. What are we going to do?" he asked. The ambassador looked around the room. Her eyes were cold. "We're going to stop them," she said. The doctor stopped fidgeting. Beth and Namani looked at each other and frowned. They were not used to hearing this tone from her. The ambassador dropped her chin and set her shoulders. "We cannot allow them to continue on any of their current paths. During the past 2 years, they have poisoned the food chains on 12 worlds that used to be among our most productive trading partners," she said. The screen behind her showed images of the worlds before and after. Namani lowered his head. "I can't. This is worse than anything we've seen. We can't let them keep coming. My people are tied to our ancestral homes and the natural environment. We are willing to fight, but we are mostly administrators. We're accountants. Many of us are farmers and growers. We're no match for the Olmeri. Please, the Alliance has to do something," he said. The ambassador nodded. "I know. That's why we're here, Namani. We are going to do 2 things. First, we're going to lure the Olmeri away from the local neighborhood. Second, we're going to find out as much as we can about them," she said. Sentar blinked. "We're going to do what?" he asked. "Are you serious?" Maru asked, frowning. "You're nuts," Biani said. She looked at the ambassador and shook her head. Galen shook his head. "I knew I wasn't going to like this," he said. Commander Brandon looked at Captain Logan and raised his eyebrows. Captain Logan shook his head, smiled, and leaned in closer to Commander Brandon. "Whatever she has in mind has the full backing of the High Council. I've been told to make sure she gets whatever she asks for," he whispered. Commander Brandon shrugged and nodded. The ambassador pointed to the display. "This outlying area between the Orion Spur and the Perseus Arm is the Perseus Transit. We are going to lure as many of the Olmeri as we can out there and trap them so they can't leave," she said. Sentar frowned. "Seems a bit remote," he said. The ambassador nodded. "That's why I chose it," she said. Sentar shook his head. "We'll be out there all alone," he said. The ambassador smiled. "Not entirely alone. We're going to put a string of magnetic field generators along a pretty wide swath on this path. Once we get the Olmeri past the threshold, we turn on the generators. The Olmeri ships will lose navigation if they try to leave," she said. Kell grinned. "A honeypot?" he asked. The ambassador nodded. Galen shook his head and looked down. "Micah, what about the systems in that sector? The Olmeri are not much on sharing. Those worlds, we can't. We just can't," he said. The ambassador shook her head sadly. "I know. We've asked quietly. We understand most of these systems are not occupied. What's another option, Galen? I'm open to anything. Anything, she said. Biani nodded. I'd like another option, too. The Olmeri are relentless. Sending them somewhere else isn't what we need to do. We need to find a way to stop them, she said. The ambassador shook her head. I don't disagree. For now, we need to distract them to buy ourselves some time. We want to keep them busy preparing to extract resources that aren't there from planets that aren't occupied, while we look for a way to stop them permanently, she said. The doctor and Galen looked at each other. You're going to use bioinjections, aren't you? The doctor asked. The ambassador smiled and nodded. She pointed to the display. Yes. Maya has identified roughly 200 systems around these stars which we believe are unoccupied. They can't support life as we know it. That's where we want to lead the Olmeri. We picked these 3 systems to seed. We expect it will take the Olmeri about a year to complete their colonization. We are also going to arrange for them to discover readings indicating there could be more. We want them to be so distracted by the anticipation of what they are going to find that they don't notice a few ships having a bit of engine trouble. We're also going to put sensor arrays along the same path as the field generators. When they experience engine trouble, we're going to plant a virus to mask the location of the problem, along with readings showing they encountered some natural event. Perhaps they were too close to a nearby star. At the same time, we're going to trigger their sensors so they pick up new readings of a wealth of resources nearby, she said. Sentar looked down and shook his head. We're going to do all that. Where are we going to get the ships? He asked. Captain Logan raised his hand. Sentar grinned and nodded. The ambassador took a breath. It won't take them that long to figure out what is happening. But even just a few months' delay could be enough for us to find a way to stop them, she said. Couldn't we find some way to keep them busy longer? Biani asked. How? Sentar asked. I don't see how we're going to do all this quickly enough. We need more time, Galen said. The average time it takes the Olmeri to destroy the ecosystems on a planet is 3 years. Then they move on. If we had some sort of magic regeneration dust to sprinkle over the planets they have destroyed and then trick them into thinking they are new worlds, maybe they'd be happy to stay in their own part of the galaxy, Commander Brandon said. Ah, the magic pixie dust solution. It's something I've been looking for too. If you can tell me where to find some, I will happily fill and carry bags of it on board, Galen said. Shush, Mr. Ecosystems expert, Maru said. You know better than any of us that it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. With the right combination of compounds, we can shorten the growing time to 5 to 8 months for plants that would normally take 10 to 12 years to mature, she said. Galen grinned playfully. Something like that might give us a longer-term solution, Biani said. For now, Micah, how are we going to get the generator and sensor arrays set up, complete terraforming the planets, and find a way to get the Olmeri to follow us all the way out to the Perseus transit, she asked. Beth smiled. Getting them to follow us is easy. We just let them know the ambassador is on board, she said. Galen grinned. Oh, yes, they'd like very much to talk with Micah. They'd really like to talk with her, he said. The ambassador smiled. Yes, well, everything is more of a challenge now. We need to avoid the Olmeri and any contact with those who are friendly towards them. They can't find out what we're up to, she said. Sentar leaned forward. Don't you think challenge is a bit of an understatement? It's going to take an army to get this done, he said. The ambassador smiled at him, then looked at Maru, Biani, and Galen. I have one, she said. Sentar sat back in his seat, nodded, and laughed. So that's why you invited us, he said. The ambassador grinned. Lieutenant Katie looked at the ambassador. She frowned, then she looked at Sentar, Maru, Biani, and Galen. What are they talking about? Who are these people, she thought. She looked at the ambassador again and shook her head. You aren't an ordinary ambassador, are you? She asked. The ambassador smiled like a Cheshire cat getting ready to disappear and shook her head. No, I'm not, she said. I'll be right back. Friends from far away. The diplomatic briefing room on the Magellan. The ambassador sat down next to the doctor. Captain Logan stood up to continue the briefing. He walked to the front and switched the display to show a station in deep space. This is the Theta Alpha station. We will have about 2 weeks to complete our basic preparations while we are in transit. The Alliance has arranged for all 4 of our Lewis-class ships to join us. They are similar to the Magellan. They can carry a number of close-range cruisers and anything else we think will be needed. As we work through the details, you will each have briefings on your ships and their capabilities. We will start those tomorrow, he said. He looked at Galen, Sentar, Biani, and Maru. Kell arrived and stood in the doorway. He waited for Captain Logan to pause. "If I may, Captain," he said, stepping into the room. Captain Logan blinked a few times. "This is unusual." Kell is always ready to answer any questions and fill in the details, but he doesn't usually volunteer to say anything, he thought. "Of course," he said. Kell walked toward the front of the room. "Captain, I would like to offer my appreciation for the charts and details you have shown here today. I have been in that region. It has many navigation challenges. We should all spend time studying these charts in detail. Knowing where we have defensive positions could be important," he said. Captain Logan nodded. "Thank you, Kell," he said. He started to continue, then stopped. Kell stood very still. He looked around the room. He nodded to Captain Logan. He smiled and nodded to the ambassador. "Ambassador, you asked me about something. The answer is yes. They will meet us at Theta Alpha," he said. The ambassador sat up straight. Her eyes got big. She shook her head. She was smiling a huge smile. "Yes? They said yes? Really? Yes?" she asked. Kell grinned and nodded. "Yes, Ambassador." He sat down. The ambassador sat back in her chair. Galen pursed his lips and turned his head. "Were you going to share or no?" he asked. Sentar shook his head and shrugged. "What are you talking about? Who are they?" Maru asked, looking first at Kell, then at the ambassador. The ambassador took a deep breath and bowed to Kell. "Nia Pilamaya, thank you," she said. Kell bowed. "Give," Biani said. The ambassador smiled. "I asked Kell if there might be 4 of his friends with his level of skill who would agree to come with us. There are. Each of you will have an Aldaran pilot," she said. Everyone was silent. They looked at Kell and then at the ambassador. They knew this could mean the difference between success and maybe not coming back at all, between avoiding encounters or being detained. There was no better pilot to have in a difficult situation than an Aldaran. "Micah, it seems there is more to you than even we know," Galen said. He smiled and nodded quietly. Kell nodded to the ambassador. "We know this will be difficult. We have decided we will do whatever we can to help protect the local neighborhood. We have many good friends here," he said. He looked hard at Nemani and nodded to him. Nemani smiled at Kell and nodded. "Thank you," he whispered. Kell took a deep breath. "I don't normally talk much, but this needs to be said, and all of you need to hear it. I'm not speaking only for myself now. If my people can provide some advantage, we will. Ambassador Lawrence has shown us time and again that she will not ask my people for frivolous or trivial things. She doesn't ask anything for herself alone. She has courage and a great caring heart. My people respect her. There's always someone she's trying to help. Now, we will help her," he said. The ambassador bowed her head humbly at the compliment. She looked up and smiled. "Thank you, Kell." "Captain, it seems we need to modify the briefing," she said. Captain Logan grinned. "Just a little, maybe," he said. He turned to Kell. "I don't know what to say." "Thank you," he said. "We will do what we can do," Kell said. He stood taller, the warrior in him matching Captain Logan's question. Captain Logan nodded and smiled, acknowledging the simplicity of his statement and his resolve. "I'm very glad you and your people are willing to help," he said. The ambassador sat back in her chair. "This will change everything," she thought. She shifted a little and winced. Galen looked at her arm. "Time's up," he said. The ambassador smiled, then frowned. She winced again. "Doctor," Galen said. The doctor nodded. "I need to get something from my quarters. I will meet you there," he said. Galen got up and went over to the ambassador's chair. "Let's go," he said. He reached out his hand to help her stand up. The ambassador tried to smile. "It hurts now," she said. Galen nodded. He led her out of the room. Namani stood up. We should all get some rest. Now that we all know what we're doing here, Maya and I will prepare some briefing packets for you. We can start again in a day or two, he said. Captain Logan nodded and stood up. Thank you, Namani, he said. He nodded several times to Kell as he walked out. Commander Brandon and Lieutenant Katie got up to leave. Beth followed Namani and Kell out the door. Sentar, Maru, and Biani sat there for a minute. Sentar scratched his head. Maru and Biani shrugged. Let's go get something to eat, Biani suggested. Sentar smiled, stood up, and headed for the door. Biani grinned at Maru. No need to ask him twice, she said. Maru stood up and followed Sentar out the door. She walked up beside him, grinning. Are you still hungry all the time? She asked. Sentar looked at her and smiled. Not so much all the time, but right now, yes. We skipped dinner, remember? He said. We did, didn't we? Biani said. She walked up on his other side. Sentar grinned. So that means I get 2 plates, right? He said. Biani and Maru shook their heads and laughed. Souvenirs. The ambassador's quarters on the Magellan. Galen walked the ambassador to her quarters. Her arm had started to hurt. The door opened and the lights came on as they entered the room. Galen, it's getting worse, the ambassador said. Did you expect it would be getting better? Galen asked. The ambassador looked down and frowned a little, then looked up at him and smiled. Why, yes, I did, she said. Galen grinned and walked her over to the center table. Sit. I have to take that scarf off, he said. Can't it wait? The ambassador asked. Galen nodded, then shook his head. For now, it will have to come off. Your arm needs to be scanned and properly set. What I did was field medicine. You need more, he said. The ambassador held up her good hand. Mark has the Jewel of Aaron, she said quietly. Galen smiled and sighed with relief. Then you will be fine, he said. The ambassador nodded. The door chime sounded. The doctor came in. He set his bag on the table. How is she? He asked Galen. She is in pain, doctor, the ambassador replied. Galen and the doctor both laughed. You are a keeper of water? Galen asked. You are a keeper of wood, the doctor said. You can tell? Galen asked. Yes, it's one of my gifts, the doctor replied. Galen smiled. The ambassador looked up at them. Guys, she said. The doctor grinned, reached into his bag, took out a small packet and unwrapped it. He'd brought the Jewel of Aaron. He slipped the ring over his middle finger and held the jewel in his palm. The jewel radiated pink with a golden glow. He began moving his hand along her arm. The jewel turned a dark red. He frowned. He slipped it off and put it down. She did more than fracture it in 3 places, didn't she? Galen asked. The doctor nodded. Part of the bone in her elbow is shattered, he said. Can you repair it? Galen asked. The doctor nodded. I can clear the debris. I have a program that will regenerate the bone. Yes, I can do it, but it will take several hours. First, the fractures have to be set, he said. Do you have something for the pain? Galen asked. The doctor picked up the jewel again. This will only last a few minutes, Micah. Then it's going to hurt worse until it heals. I will give you something to make you sleep so you won't feel it, he said. He moved the jewel along her arm. Again, this time it glowed a bright red. The ambassador relaxed her shoulder. Much better, doctor. Thank you, she said. Galen smiled. The doctor shook his head. I still have to set your arm, he said. The ambassador smiled at him. Give me a minute, if you would, please. I'm enjoying the moment, she said. The doctor and Galen both laughed. How many were there? The doctor asked. The ambassador chuckled. 4. I got 2. Galen got the other 2, she said. Galen grinned and turned his head to one side. But I didn't break anything, he said. Yes, you did, the ambassador said. Galen laughed. Not mine, he replied. The doctor shook his head. You aren't as young as you were. You can't keep doing these sorts of things, Micah, he said. No options, doctor, the ambassador replied. A bit of the fighter came out in her voice. I wasn't going to stick around so the Olmeri could take me to Ulm for a nice long talk. Vice-Chancellor Jarvis had arranged that for me. They would have taken Galen, too, she said. The doctor took a deep breath. I appreciate the need, Micah, but you can't do what you could do back in the day. You may still think you can, he said. The ambassador looked at him harshly. Think? She asked. Okay, yes. You can still do what you could do, but your body isn't the same. You bruise too easily. Using external force is not your best skill anyway, the doctor said. The ambassador grinned. That is true. Thanks, Mark. I really do appreciate your concern, she said. Galen turned his head and looked at the doctor. She said something about body armor, he said. The doctor smiled and shook his head. She does have a knack, doesn't she? He asked. Galen nodded. We still need to set her arm, he said. The doctor nodded. You wrapped it, he said. Galen stepped behind the ambassador's chair. Lean forward just a little, he said. He nudged her away from the chair. He began gently unwrapping the scarf. The doctor moved the table closer. Rest your arm here, he said. Galen moved the ambassador's arm onto the table and finished unwrapping it. Such a lovely shade of purple, the doctor said. The ambassador looked down at her arm. It was swollen and the bones in her forearm weren't quite where they should be. She relaxed her shoulder. Go ahead, she said. The doctor took hold of her arm just so and moved the bones back to their correct position. You have a gift for that too, apparently, Galen said, smiling. It's easy for me to see the connections, the doctor said. He took hold of the ambassador's shoulder. One more, he said. He shifted and the bones moved into place. He picked up the jewel again and moved it along her arm. This time it turned a dark orange. Much better. Everything is where it should be. Now, hold still. We need to wrap your arm. You have to keep still for the next few hours, he said. He slid the jewel off his hand, took several medical wraps out of his bag, and handed two to Galen. He slid one under the ambassador's forearm and closed it snugly. Galen wrapped her upper arm. The ambassador looked up at both of them, grinning. Can I have my lolly now? She asked. The doctor took the small packet out of his bag and put it on the table. Your arm is going to start hurting pretty soon. Take this. It will make you sleep. Maya, please change the lighting around Ambassador Lawrence's sleeping area to my medical preset A97, he said. The lights in the sleeping area repointed themselves so they were all directed at where she slept. They started to pulse ever so slightly, changing through shades of orange and pink, then fading to blue and starting again. It wasn't bright or garish. The lights were subtle and dark with a penetrating glow. They made the room feel quiet and calm. Nice, Galen said. It took me a few tries, the doctor replied. Galen shook his head and smiled. Pretty sure it was more than a few. It's quite good, he said. The doctor nodded and picked up his bag. Get some rest, Micah. I will check on you in the morning, he said. The ambassador smiled at him. Thank you, Mark. I wouldn't. The doctor grinned. Yes, you would, but I'd rather you didn't need to find out. Now go to sleep and let the lights do their work. You really messed up your arm. It's going to take a few hours, he said. Yes, doctor, she said, grinning. Then more quietly. I appreciate everything you do for me, for all of us, she said. She really didn't know what she would do without him. He kept her and the whole team together. The doctor nodded gently. It's nice to be appreciated. Now, go get some rest, he said. Galen smiled at him. Thank you, doctor. Seems we're going to have some very interesting conversations, he said. That's all for tonight. Join us next time when the ambassador reviews her plan in detail. Then she and her 4 old friends get reacquainted and reminisce about the old days as they prepare for their mission and what they're going to do next. You've been listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you. Good night.